Welcome to Sam's Business Growth Show. I'm Sam Dunning, a digital marketing, sales, and business growth evangelist. Tune in and subscribe today as I'll be interviewing business leaders, experts, and entrepreneurs from around the globe. You'll be learning their story, how digital marketing has helped them along the way, and exclusive tips and insights to help you skyrocket your own business. Welcome back to the show. I'm excited and delighted to be joined today by Victor Antonio. Victor is an international speaker, a business consultant, and he has a BS in electrical engineering and an MBA. Victor had a 20-year career as a top sales executive and was president of global sales and marketing for a $420 million company. He has shared the stage with top business speakers, including Zig Ziglar, Daymond John, Rudy Giuliani, I think I butchered that spelling, Paul Otellini, CEO of Intel, and John May, CEO of FedEx Kinkos, plus he's the author of 13 books on sales and motivation. Victor, a pleasure to have you on. How are you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome, dude. So there's plenty we'd love to cover with your good self today, Victor. We would love to learn your story. We'd love to learn some of your top business growth and sales tips, along with some of the digital marketing channels and strategies that you've utilized across the years that have helped you to be the success that you are. But if we could start from the very top, please, Victor, if we could learn a bit more about yourself, for anyone that doesn't know Victor Antonio, where you grew up, and how you got into business ever since leaving school, and some of the key moments in business that took you to where you are today, and some of the lessons you've learned. If you could kindly share with us a bit more, sir.
All right, I will, but I'll try to tighten it up a little bit.
Okay.
My family's from Puerto Rico, but I was born and raised in Chicago. They moved to Chicago in the late 50s. So we were extremely, I'll just say, poor. And so my mother was always about get the education, get that job, get that job, make some money, right? So that's why I decided to become electrical engineering, totally money motivated. Got into engineering, eventually got my MBA. But I discovered something right away, Sam. Once I was in engineering for about 3 years, I'm like, I don't like this. And I'm giving you the short version here. And then eventually I started kind of moving around. And I finally found sales. And when I found sales, it's like I found my hyper pad. You know what I mean? It's like that was me. And so I was very fortunate. I had a technical background. I was selling a lot of technology equipment, specifically telecommunications software. And that's how I got into sales, man. And it just kept growing from there.
Cool. So you're doing engineering. What was the first role that you got into in the sales side of things, Victor? And how did that come about?
You know, it was almost like an in-between step. I was a application engineer for a wireless company. And so I was designing wireless systems, and I would actually travel with salespeople because I would handle the technical conversation. They would handle the sales conversation. And that's when I got to understand how it is to work with a salesperson and what their life was all about. We called them four-legged calls. And so I did a lot of four-legged calls, and I really got to understand the sales side. And then fast forward, my wife, we had our first child, and after a year, my wife's like, I'd really like to stay home with our child. What do you think? I said, well, if I go into sales, because I've known these salespeople, I think I can make more money. And I said, but the downside is I'll be traveling a lot. And she was like, okay. She said that too quickly, Sam. You know what I mean? She was like, okay, go. And so that's
more
how
money,
I got into
traveling.
sales.
Yes. Got it.
Yeah,
okay. Cool, man. All right. So that makes sense. So you were kind of in amongst sales reps whilst you were doing your more technical role, and you thought, hey, these guys are traveling, these guys are making decent money, and you saw it from the forefront and you wanted to get involved. Okay. So how old were you when you took that leap, Victor, when you got into sales and moved into that side of things?
So my first job was as a software / technical engineer. So let me see. I'm doing numbers here in my head. I had to be about maybe 30.
Okay.
When I finally got into sales, like hardcore sales, and then I started traveling. My first region was Latin America. Obviously, I spoke Spanish. I speak Spanish, so that was the first place to start, and that's really where I cut my teeth in Latin America. And it was quite eye-opening, Sam, because, being U.S.-centric, being born in the U.S., you don't see much outside the U.S. The majority of people never travel, especially at that time. And so it was quite eye-opening to begin traveling the world a bit and seeing how everybody else lives and sells and does business. So it was very eye-opening.
I bet that was an exciting time. But that was really, I bet you saw a lot of stuff.
it was at times when, you know, you didn't mind getting on an airline. You know what I mean? When you had enough room, you were excited about to go to the next place. Today, if you talk to me about travel, I'm like, do I have to get on that plane?
Yeah, you've done it too
Is there
much.
any way to beam me over there?
Cool, man. Okay, so you're with this company. So you're with the same company that you were doing the tech side of things for on the sales side of things. How long did you stay there, Victor? And are there any lessons that you learned in terms of business that you could share with us that might be of value to our audience?
Well, here's okay. So I'm gonna be very direct. You mind? I'm from Chicago, so I have to be very direct with people. So
Sure
here's
thing.
what's interesting. You know, when I got into my job the first time, you know, the first job I had as an engineer, you know, I had lousy managers. Do you know what I mean? And that forced me to leave the first company after 3 years.
Okay.
Then I went to a wireless company where I found a great manager who knew how to nurture. And I think, you know, finding a good manager to work for, oh, if you find a good manager, that's worth more than the actual salary. And I want people to register that. If you work for a company and you have a great manager, trust me, there's value in that. And so when I found this new manager, he really let me spread my wings, so to speak, on the application engineering side. And he also encouraged me when I wanted to move into go into sales. And from there, I moved around quite a bit because I have a different perspective on, you know, employment. You know, people always talk about loyalty, staying with the company, and I'm like, no, I'm a capitalist at heart, and so I view myself as a product slash service, right, to be
Okay.
bought and sold on the open market. So I'm like, I'm a hired gun. You know what I mean? I go out to the highest bidder, and people are always shocked when I say that. I say, but that's really business. You know, the thing is, you know, I know people listen to this and go, well, what about loyalty, corporate loyalty? What's funny because most corporations, I'll just say at least 80% of companies will not show any loyalty when they go through a financial downturn. They get rid of people. And the way I look at it is that every week I enter into a social contract with the company, right? And that contract says, Victor, you do 40 hours of work. I'll just say 40 hours. But in sales, you know, it's more like 60 to 70 hours worth of work.
You're right. Yeah.
If I do my 60 hours worth of work, I expect compensation in return. That's the social contract. There's no loyalty clause in there. So if you're a salesperson and you're not making the money you should be making, you can try to talk to your management to change your compensation program. But if that doesn't work, leave. Listen to me. Just leave and find another company. If you're good, you'll find another great company. So I moved around 4 or 5 different companies as I was moving up. And one of the things I really appreciated, Sam, and I come to value, maybe I'm wrong, but just my perspective. I always say, I'm just giving you 1 degree of a 360. And my 1 degree perspective says, sometimes a company doesn't appreciate you as much as they should. And it's funny how when you go to another company, they show a whole different level of appreciation. And so when I moved from company to company, my salaries went up, my titles went up, and, you know, and I guess my respect level went up because I came from another company. Does that make sense?
To a certain extent, yeah. So you're talking, what you mentioned just before we got into that, Victor, was that a good manager is better than a higher salary. So that's interesting. And then you were saying you moved about a few roles because they weren't necessarily compensating you enough for the work that you're putting in and the results you were getting, which makes sense. And then you said you worked up to a higher level. And then could you explain that a bit more, what you mean on that side of things, Victor?
So what I've found, and again, 1 degree, ask 100 other people, you get different answers. But what I've discovered is that I'm working for a company, and if I don't see a growth path for me, if I don't have a manager who has a growth path for me, then guess what? I'm going to another company. So, for example, if somebody says, hey, for you to get from a manager to a director, that's going to take you 5 years. I'm like, that's a little long, especially when I'm producing right now, right? So, but if you tell me, you know what, Victor, in a year, if a slot opens up, I'm going to move you into the director slot. This is what I need you to do over the next year to prove yourself. I'd be like, all right, we're in. Game on, right? But if I keep getting the song and dance, well, we'll see what's happening with the market. I'm like, next best offer that comes along, bye-bye. And I don't feel guilty about that because, again, every company is a profit center, right? And so is a salesperson. I think salespeople need to look at themselves as a profit center. You know, think about it. We're the only profit centers from a sales perspective, right? Everybody else is a cost center. Marketing is a cost, right? Legal is a cost. Infrastructure cost. So again, maybe my perspective is a little different, but I think that, yeah.
I like that. I mean, in terms of what you're saying, I think it's very important that when you're with an organization to have clarity and to not have things as wishy-washy. So when you go somewhere, you don't want someone saying, look, I want to know, if I'm in this organization, can you help me get from here to a higher level? What are my aspirations? Where can I potentially grow to be? And if they say, we'll see what happens in a few years, then it's going to ring alarm bells straight away, isn't it? For most people, we've got their heads screwed on. So I completely get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You want someone, or you want a team that you can work with, or a management team where they're going to say, look, we're going to try and get you to the top spot. We're going to try and get you to management or director level within X years. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to attack it. You need to work with us. You need to put in the work. And yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay, Victor. So moving forward, so you
by
had
the way,
a few.
I just want to emphasize, I just want to add this, Sam, that, one of the things that people should be aware of, and I drive this point home all the time, is that at the end of the day, you have bills to pay. At the end of the day, you have bills to pay. And I know some of you are young right now. You're thinking, I'm only 30, Victor. I don't need to be thinking about a lot of bills, saving money, retirement, and all that. I'm telling you right now, I believe that between, I'll say 30 and 50, I think are your highest earning years. Do you know what I mean? And so you need to accelerate and maximize that time frame as best as possible. And then that's where you're making money. So you need to be efficient and, productive in who you work for and who you give your time to. And I think you should be selfish with your time. And again, if you're good at selling, and I'm speaking about salespeople only, if you're good at selling, demand the price, demand the compensation.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's some good points for our sales reps tuning in. All right. So moving forward, Victor, what was happening next for you? You went for a few sales roles. What happened? Because I know you said in your intro we talked about you being a vice president of global sales. So was that a bit later in your career? Was there any interesting insights you can share with us before then, or should we jump straight there?
No, we can jump straight into that. So what happened was I started out in Latin America, moved up gently, as they say, and then I became vice president of sales for Latin America. And then what happened was, we grew the business from 14 million to like 98 million in 2.5 years. Just monster.
Wow, that's amazing, man.
Restructured the whole region. So
nice.
One of the things I did there, if you want the real explanation, the full story, if you go online, and I was with Grant Cardone. We did the 10X seminar. So if you type in Victor Antonio Grant Cardone, you'll see the full explanation of how I did that from 14 to 98 million. And so from a management, so now I'm a manager, Sam. Now I'm the guy that has to nurture people, right? And so what's interesting is when I took over the region, the president of the company told me basically, look, we've never done more than 14.1 million in the last 10 years. He says, whatever you do, don't sell less than that. And so I remember having to, for the first 90 days, all I did was assess what I had in the region. So I had 5 offices scattered throughout the region. And so I really had to assess this new territory, and to show commitment, I had to move my family into the region. So we moved to Argentina for 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
that's a big move.
Yeah, they wanted me to run the region from the region, right? And I was like, it was the first time living outside the U.S. It was quite difficult. But, in the spirit of full disclosure, within the first 90 days, after giving instruction, after letting people know what the plan was, I had to let go about 30% of my sales force because they weren't getting it. We sell on value. That was our philosophy, as our mantra. We don't sell price. We position value. That's what we do. And so that was really hard to do. But it was interesting, when I got rid of 30%, everybody else got the message and everybody else lined up. I'm giving you the short version, but those people there were people who simply weren't meant to be in sales. We tried to move them into other positions within the company. There's some people who just simply didn't want to buy into our philosophy, so we moved them out of the company. And then those who were willing to learn, adapt, and grow made more money under me than they ever did in their whole sales career. That's how well we did. And so if you're a manager,
is that just before we move on, Victor, is that something you would encourage for business owners or management to get rid of staff that aren't performing fast, or should we give them a certain window to start getting results, or is there any light that you can shed on that side of things?
Yes. The thing is, look, you have to, I feel for people. I see people and their families, so I'm not insensitive, but at the same time, we're running a business. And so as a manager, you have that responsibility to nurture. I did a podcast on how to save a struggling salesperson. If you go to my Sales Influence podcast, you can find that. Okay. And so what I talk about is I give salespeople like a 90-day plan. I say specifically, here's what I want you to do. I give them tunnel vision. It's like blinders. Here's all I need you to do for the next 90 days. You execute on that, I know you're in the game. And so that's one of the things I would recommend any manager to do. If you think you have somebody on the bubble, don't surprise them by firing them, okay? Give them a 90-day, but don't give them just the window. That's too easy. Like, get better in 90 days. That doesn't help.
No.
What I did was, here's what I need you to do over the next 90 days. And I'd said to them, if you need me to do the calls with you, if you need me to do a ride along with you, I'll get on a plane and I'll be there right next to you and I'll watch what you're doing. And so the smart one says, okay, come on down, watch me do the presentation. After the presentation, we would do a debriefing. Okay, here's what you need to change in your pitch. Here's your, and we would do that whole thing. And then we would do some role playing in the car. The customer says this, you can't answer like that. That's a great manager. And if you do all that and still don't respond, then at the end of the day, at night, you can put that head on that pillow very gently, knowing you did everything you could. So as a manager, here's what I want you to ask yourself when you look at a salesperson. Do you have good clay or do you have bad clay? When you're looking at somebody on the bubble, that's the two questions you want to ask. Good clay, they can be molded. Bad clay, they're not going to do you any good. The faster you get rid of them, the better. And a lot of managers know that they need to get rid of people, and they don't do it. They rationalize why they shouldn't get rid of them. But yet it keeps them up at night, and it ruins team morale. So the sooner you can get rid of people who simply are bad clay, the better.
Cool. And I love that saying.
Harsh?
I don't think so, man. I think you've explained that perfectly, to be fair. And I've never heard that saying, good clay and bad clay, but I really like that. And no, like you said, you're giving them a 90-day window. You're offering to pretty much hold the hand, saying, look, if you've got any, here's where I need you to get in 90 days time. Here's how we're going to attack it. If you need support, help, if you need me to come with you on calls, on meetings, on presentations, then just let me know and we'll do it. And if they don't respond to that, then there's something going drastically
wrong. Give them all
wrong.
the tools. Here's what I would suggest. You give a salesperson all the tools, all the training that they need. I had a salesperson once tell me, I said, Victor, the reason I'm selling is I'm unhappy with my compensation plan, to which I said, how do you want me to change it? He offered some suggestions. We found an agreeable point, right? He wanted money, and I got that. He's a capitalist. I got it. I said, okay, you can earn more. You can do this. Is this number acceptable? He says, absolutely. I said, what else do you need? He said, well, my car allowance is too low. True story, Sam. I go, what is it at? I was like, 250. I said, what do you think it should be? He says, be more like 300. That's the market rate. I said, okay, you got that too. Is there anything else? He says, yeah, not joking. He says, I need a new computer. I said, okay, we'll get you a new computer. I said, is there anything else? And he said, I would like we don't have a credit card. I don't want to use mine. Can I have a company credit card? I said, absolutely, got that. Anything else? And he said, nope, that's it, Victor. To which I said, great. So there's no reason you shouldn't hit your number, because here's the number I want at the end of the quarter. And every month we're going to check in to see where that number's at. Within, 2 months, he was gone. And it was not because it was a guy who wanted everything, but to which I said, okay, I'll give you everything you need, so there are no excuses for not selling. I even offered him to send him to the training courses if he wanted, classes, workshops, and he refused. But that was his choice, right? And that's what I mean by giving them everything they need. Really equip your salespeople. And if the time comes where you have to get rid of them, you just do, but you feel good because you did everything you could.
Makes perfect sense. Awesome, Victor. Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about how you scaled this business up, because it sounds like you skyrocketed their sales in quite a short amount of time. Is that right?
That's correct. It was like 2.5 years. Like I said, literally from 14 to 98, we were in a good market. But what I think happened, if I can bore you with some detail, is that, I'll say it this way, their approach to the market in general, it was always run by a Latin American vice president, right? Which means in many cases, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but I know my people. It was very ad hoc, right?
Right.
And so I came down with structure, which was the first thing, right?
Yep.
And so what I did was, people were crossing into each other's territory. Distributors were confused. Buyers were confused, I suppose, who to talk to. The headquarters was in Minnesota. Nobody spoke Spanish there, so there was no support there. So we loaded up customer support with Spanish people. We opened up an office in Miami, so we had Spanish people speaking technical support there as well that can fly into the region on a dime, one shot. And then we structured the region, and there was a no violation rule in terms of you trying to sell into somebody else's country if you found the deal. Didn't work. And so we created commission sharing when a joint deal was formed. So a lot of structure, a lot of training, and then a lot of in-country support really allowed us to accelerate our growth.
Structure, training, support. Got it. Was this business selling conferences, Victor? What was it you guys were selling exactly?
All the infrastructure we're currently using now on Zoom is probably running on some of the equipment I sold. So we sold
nice.
telecom equipment. We sold the fiber optic side. We were selling at that time, obviously, DSLs, HFC networks, which are hybrid fiber, coax, and fiber. And then also everything on the copper side, which is when you go to a central office, all the switching that's going on, we were selling those as well. So everything that integrates with Cisco switches and all those beautiful pieces of equipment, we were selling.
Awesome, man. Okay, and those were the main three things in terms of the growth. And is there any, before we move on to when you got into speaking and starting your own business, is there any other insights you'd like to share with us that might be of value in terms of any sales reps or any marketing reps or any business owners just before we move on?
I think for business owners is, you got to find the right people. We've talked about that already, right? You have to have some sense of structure and consistency in your approach to a market. In other words, segment your market and how you go in there. So every time we went into a market, we segmented it by verticals. We call, just different vertical channels. That's why I say go watch the Grant Cardone presentation I did. It goes into great detail. And then last but not least, if you're a business owner, you need to compensate your salespeople exceptionally well. Don't be cheap. Give them a great compensation plan, because what happens is we as managers, we don't want to manage salespeople. I don't want to manage salespeople. I like salespeople that never call in and just report their numbers at the end of the month. You could be on the beach 29 days out of the month. As long as on day 30 I get my number, I don't care. That's my philosophy. And so put a great compensation plan together. Motivation takes care of itself when it comes to salespeople.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm actually in the process of becoming a director myself and a business owner. So I know exactly what you mean. Being in the forefront and being on the impact of a sales rep myself, I know exactly what you mean. I've had good managers, I've had terrible managers. And when you're not rewarded, because as you know full well, decent sales reps, in my opinion, pretty much work non-stop. If you're really passionate about the product you sell and what you're offering, you'll go above and beyond. You won't just do the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You'll be working weekends. You'll be planning your days in advance, which you know all too well. And in return,
I'm laughing because I'm reflecting back. You're making me remember. I was in Puerto Rico back in January, and I did a presentation, right? And I was unselling, and this lady pulls me to the side, like during the break. She goes, "Victor, I have to talk to you," to which I said, "Yes." She goes, "Well, it's a little different here in Puerto Rico." I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, "Really? I've been everywhere. Trust me, it's no different." She goes, "Well, right here, they don't have a good compensation plan." To which I said, she goes, "We have to work, more than 8 hours a day, and we still don't get compensated." And I said two things. I said, one, I said, sales, as you said, is not a 9 to 5 job. If you believe sales is a 9 to 5 job, please get out of sales. Save yourself the heartache and the business owner heartache, right?
Right.
And then she said something about the compensation plan. I said, "There's only 4 options." I said, "Have you asked your boss for a better compensation plan?" She says, "Well, no, I haven't." I said, "Well, one, why haven't you sold them on a better compensation plan?" And she goes, "Well, I don't think they'll give it to us." I said, "Well, if they don't give it to you, then leave." I said, "It's that simple. It really isn't that complicated. If you're good at what you do, you'll land easily at another job." The reason I love sales and sales training is because I truly believe that if you know how to sell, you'll never be unemployed. You'll never be unemployed, man.
Awesome, man. Okay, so there's some great insights, and I love the fact that it's simple, really. Just compensate your sales reps accordingly, make sure they're happy, and then they should perform. And if they don't, give them that chance, and then move on. Okay, so I think myself and our audience would like to know a little bit more about you, how you got into public speaking, Victor, because that's actually something I'm looking at myself right now. Is something I want to look at to improve over the years that come. But yeah, if you could shed some more light on how you got into that and how that's played a role in you setting up your own business, that would be awesome, just to learn how you got into it.
So what happened to me, the history has to go back. I'm going to date myself so hard right now. 93, I saw Zig Ziglar for the first time. Right. And I was like,
okay,
my God, man, look at this guy. It was just like, I don't know. It was like, I'm not saying that the light shone down and there was a Gregorian chant and magical things were happening in my head. But when I saw this guy speaking, I was like, wow. And so what happened was, by the way, did we freeze up?
It has a little bit. I can still hear you.
I think
can you hear me? Yep, I can hear you my side. I just can't see you. Can you hear me, Victor?
Okay, now I can hear you. It paused right as I was
All
going to
right.
tell you the story. So I got your question. And by the way, I'm recording, so I'll send you the recording. You can clip it.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, I can hear you now.
All
Yep,
right,
we're all
perfect.
good.
Anyway, so I got your question, then it just froze right after your question. So I'll start from there.
No worries.
So
Cheers.
how I got into speaking, I have to go back, and I'm again date myself really hard here by going back to '93 when I saw Zig Ziglar for the first time on stage. And when I saw Zig Ziglar for the first time on stage, it was just like one of those moments, right? It was like magical, right? You know, the Gregorian chants, the light came through the roof, the whole bit. And I was like, I want to do that one day. So that was the seed that was planted. Then I joined, it was right after that I joined, you know what Toastmasters is, Sam? You know what that
I
is,
do,
Toastmasters?
yeah. The only reason I do know is because I've got a friend actually, and he does that. But apart from that, I mean, I know that it's a group, is it? And
It's a
is it a
speaking
little bit like a
organization
network?
where
Okay.
you
Yeah,
learn
tell
how to
us a bit more.
speak. And I'm telling you right now, if you want to be a speaker, step number one, in fact, if you want to be a better salesperson, step number one, join Toastmasters. Go through the 10 speeches they give you. And so I joined
Okay.
Toastmasters where I learned how to speak. And I did that for 2-3 years. I even started competing and winning. So I got really good
Cool.
at what I was doing. But by the way, that also impacted my sales skills because I became the go-to guy when it came to presenting to big customers. So when my bosses
Right.
needed, a big customer's coming in, who presents? They're like, send in Victor. He knows how to present. Send them in. And so that's an important step. That was an important step. So Zig Ziglar, I joined Toastmasters. And then fast forward, I was vice president of sales in Latin America. And then I get offered a job, president of global sales and marketing for a $420 million company. And so I'm doing that and I'm building. But it was around that time, and I was 36,
Okay.
37, that I started feeling what I call this quiet discontent. And the quiet discontent is that feeling you get when you know you're not doing your thing, as I always say, or I call it do your thing, right? And I knew I wasn't doing my thing, and I was like, I wasn't on purpose. I just wasn't aligned, you know? And I talked to my wife about it. I said, he said, what do you want to do? He says, well, remember that guy I saw years ago, Zig Ziglar, that whole thing? I want to do that. I want to write books. I want to do that. And so one day, man, literally, and I would not recommend this strategy, by the way, but one day I just, after talking to my wife, I just quit. If you want to see the full story, I did a documentary. It's on
All right.
YouTube for
Okay.
free. It's called The Motivator. So if you type in Victor Antonio, The Motivator,
Yeah.
you'll see it. It actually was nominated for several film festivals, won one international film festival award, and it tells the
Brilliant.
whole.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. So basically, I quit, right? And so, at that time, Sam, you'll love this story. I was making like my base salary was $250,000 a year. My
Whoa.
average commissions were like 200,000 to 300,000 and plus stock options. And once I quit, they said you lose everything. And I go, I get it. I understand. Now, we weren't super rich. We just had a little money in the bank, if you know what I mean. But I was ready to, you know how sometimes you just got to push the chips in, boom, all in, right? And I remember I started the career in June, and the first 6 months, I made a great income of $17,000. That's 1-7 in case you didn't hear me correctly. So I went from big dough to little dough
From
very quickly.
250K, yeah, to 70, a little bit of a drop, yeah.
It was horrible. It was horrible. And that's when I realized, I got to get good at marketing myself, get better at really getting out there. And so
Okay.
then the next year I made like $56,000. And then the third year, or last 2.5 years later, I made, over 100,000, and life's been good ever since that. And so what I tell young aspiring speakers is like, first of all, you should join Toastmasters, really learn the craft of giving speeches. Look, anybody can talk, but not that many people can give a speech. And I have to remind people there's a difference. Anybody can talk and blather, but a speech is something that's impactful, that really impacts people and says, I love what this guy's saying. And then the second step, join Toastmasters, and then really take time to build your speaking career. Pick a niche to go after. I started out doing more motivational stuff. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
One of my first books was called The Logic of Success, which is just my personal story. But then I said, you know what? I want to go back to my roots, which is sales. So I started focusing in on sales, and that's how the sales influence concept /podcast came about.
Awesome, man. Okay. So in terms of public speaking, Victor, that obviously makes sense that it kind of ties into presenting to prospects and customers, because the way that you communicate with your ideal customers, the way you portray yourself and the way you come across is so key. It's so important to communicate well as a sales professional or a business owner. So that makes perfect sense. But were there any other ways that it improved you in terms of both a person and in your business life?
I think what happened, I had a moment. I'm glad you asked the question because I don't usually tell this story, but it's a good story because it's real. And that is what, the year I was making only $17,000. So we made the
Sure.
17, right? And I'm starting my second year, right? And I remember I was driving in Florida. I was driving up to Orlando, Miami to Orlando. It was like a 3-hour drive. Excuse me. And I was driving, and I remember I'm driving, and I'm going, I'm not having fun. I'm not making a lot of money. I'm not having fun. You know how you're having that moment in the car by yourself? You know what I mean? Like, oh, what did I do? Why did
A depressing time, I said.
Flashbacks, right? You're just going, it's a real
What's
moment.
going on with my life?
It's real. You're like driving, going, yeah. And so just to let you know, I went through the same thing. We all go through these things, right? And so I remember a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of them by Stephen Covey. And one of the models in there is the circle of influence. And if you can imagine 2 circles, right? Looks like a donut. The outer ring is the things you can control. That's the circle of concern. And then in the center, the whole of the donut, that's your circle of influence, things you can control. So I've always used that model as from a point of view of, okay, what can't I control? What can I control? Like right now, we're going through this pandemic, right? I can worry about the pandemic. I can worry about this. I can worry about the market. I can worry about the politics. I don't have time for that. I focus on the center circle and go, what can I control? What can I do? So I was having the same moment and I go, what can I control? And I was like, well, I can't control how much money I make, people booking me. So why don't we just have fun with this thing? You know what? Let's do it our way. And so I used to do a structured corporate speech. And then that day, it was Valencia College. I still remember the college. I just let her rip, man. You know what I mean? I still had my structure of the speech, but I did it my way. And I just had fun with it. And, at the end, I got like a standing ovation. It was the weirdest thing. I actually enjoyed it. And that was, to me, the turning point in my speaking career. Now, that applies in 2 ways. One, to your speaking career, that you have to speak with your authentic voice. Now, by authentic voice, I mean, I don't like, for example, when I listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, with all due respect, I can't enjoy the guy. I'm sorry. I love his content. Gary Vaynerchuk, I give him credit for getting me started on video when I read his book, Crush It. And the guy, I think, is a genius. But, dude, I can't listen to him, right? He's just not for me.
Fair enough.
I think you should have a certain level of respect for the audience. The whole dropping F-bombs, the whole, it's like, by the way, I'm from Chicago. We know how to drop F-bombs. I mean, it's just like we eat them for breakfast, right? So it's not a problem. I don't mind when somebody does it when it's a point of frustration. There's sometimes where you just got to drop one, right? But
of course,
when somebody does it almost gratuitously. What's that?
No, I completely agree. I mean, when you get to that level to create an impact, or if you're frustrated, then you've got to swear. But I know what you mean. It's a little bit excessive, isn't it, at times? And I kind of agree.
Yeah, I don't mind people like getting so frustrated. They go, shit. Do you know what? And you go, I feel that frustration because it's coming from a deep, deep place. It's not just part of regular language. And so I say that because when you find your style, too often people interpret that as, you mean I can just speak like I speak on the street? I'm like, no, not if you want to get booked. You got to be a professional. But there's ways of saying things. To me, people who swear, it's almost a shortcut for, I don't want to say intelligence, but it's a laziness. Because if you really wanted to impact somebody, you would really work the wording. You would work how you build up to it. And again, I'm not being a prude here. I'm not saying don't. So, Gary, don't call me because I love you, bro. But you know what I mean? It's just, but the thing is, it's interesting because that's his style, right? And that's his authentic self. My problem isn't so much Gary, really. Now that I really think about it, it's the people who try to copy Gary. Because I've seen people now try to use that same approach, and it works for Gary because he kind of like set the mold. Do you know what I mean? I personally don't think it's necessary because I really like when the guy just talks to you. But, when I discovered my authentic voice, it was, how do I use humor and storytelling and enjoy the presentation but still deliver content? if you listen to my content, it's really a shifting between humor and content, humor and motivation, content and motivation, content and humor. I'm just shifting all the time, just interrupting the pattern as I go through to keep people's attention. And so I think there's an art to speaking. So, so when that was a moment for me, Sam, when I did it my way, my authentic way, being professional, my way, it worked. And when I started selling that way, it also worked. And so what I'm saying to you, and by that I mean you, whoever's listening to this, is that if you want to be a speaker, a great salesperson, you got to find your authentic voice, but be a professional about it. There's always ways of saying things, right? Without having to, go into the gutter, so to speak. So I don't know if I'm just blathering on, but
no, that makes sense. I mean, I love that, the fact that you've got to keep it authentic, and it makes perfect sense. And I think some of the recommendations you've given there in terms of Toastmasters, in terms of the fact that once you started enjoying what you're doing, keeping it professional, and kind of working out ways to tell stories. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you this one story because I had a guy.
Sure.
His name is, and I don't mind telling his name because I hope he hears it. His name is David Shoemaker, and David Shoemaker was one of the greatest salespeople that ever worked for me, right? And David didn't really need an instruction, so he was just good on his own. You just wind him up and let him go, right? But what was interesting about David, it was like, if you look at him, he was the nerdiest looking guy at the time, right? Handsome guy, just nerdy looking, but very quiet. And so when I used to tell people that's one of my best salespeople, they're like, him? And he was such an introvert. And I realized that, and I remember I asked a customer, I said, what is it about Dave that, you enjoy, from a sales standpoint? He says, Victor, he just comes in here. He's always polite. He always wants to know what's going on with our business. He's never trying to sell, but he's always presenting something new to us and sharing some perspective. He's never pushy, and we welcome him when he comes in the door. And I used to see that when I used to do the four-legged calls with him, just, do the ride-alongs. And he showed me that you don't have to be that slick salesperson. That model we have in our head, that rough person, ABC, always be closing person. No, use your style. I'm telling you, whoever you are, you have a style, and that style is valuable. You just got to figure out how to close with it. That's it. But do it your way. It's more authentic. That's fantastic. For somebody. I know somebody's listening to this right now. Definitely. That's going to impact them. I just know there's somebody out there.
No, that's it. I'm sure I certainly did in my younger days. I had it in my head that as a salesperson, you had to be super slick, super confident, kind of good looking. You had to go in there, tell the prospect kind of all the features and benefits of your product, just blurt it all out and just come across super confident when in fact it doesn't work. I mean, I myself are quite an introvert, but I've kind of played it to my advantage. It's helped pique my curiosity. So I ask better questions. Of course, a lot of that has come with the material that I consume. So a lot of the sales skills that I picked up have come from podcasts, video content, all the books that I read, and so on and so forth. But it's just like you say, Victor, it's a really good point. It's understanding how what style suits you. So not trying to be like everyone else, but understanding what persona fits you, and then working with it to maximize it. Really, that makes great sense. Okay, man. So it sounds like you ramped up your speaking business over the years. On this show, Victor, we like to take the angle of digital marketing and the role that's played and any benefits you've had from digital marketing. So any specific channels that you've had success with, Victor, and any ones that you recommend for our audience to look into?
Huge. I already mentioned the big one. When I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It, I think it's Crush It, not Crushing It, Crush It. I remember reading that book, and it was around that time that YouTube was bought by Google.
Right. Okay.
Gary V, who was dead on, was like, he was like video. So I went all in on YouTube, man. Like forget all the other channels. I said, YouTube is my play. And so like today, I think I have almost 1,200 videos online on YouTube.
That's a huge amount. When did you start?
2008. So that's 12 years now.
Oh, about 12 years. Okay.
Yeah, man. I've been chunking. So today our cadence is 3 pieces of video content every week, whether it's, by the way, or I say digital content, whether it's podcast or video, we do 3 pieces every week. And they're typically, my podcast, 5 to 10 minutes. And so that's our cadence, right? By cadence, I mean, that's our rhythm.
So
and if you're listening
do you mean that goes to your mailing list, your email list, or?
No, stuff we post online.
Got it.
By the
okay.
way, so in other words, I upload at least 2 podcasts, 1 video every week. Those are what I mean by 3 pieces of content. I should say it that way. So 3 pieces of content go online every week just to keep it fresh. You know what I mean? And then obviously we blast it out to our email list. But I'm telling you right now, YouTube for me has been a great lead generator. I'm talking about super inbound generating leads, right? And so for the last, I'm going to say 3 to 5 years, and I'm guessing because I've never really tracked it, but I don't think I've made a cold call in 3 to 5 years. You know what I mean? Because of all the leads we had. People come to me. Now, here's what's interesting. You know, Google did a study called the ZMOT study, which is Zero Moment of Truth study, which talked about how many sources of information do people look at online before contacting a vendor or supplier. And so the number was 10. So think about it. If you go online, just think about how you search. You go online, you're looking for something, and you look at 10 sources of information, video, articles, blogs, whatever, podcasts. By the time somebody reaches my website, because they're looking for a keynote speaker, right? They already know who I am. I got so many videos online. You can't help but know who I am, right? You can read my articles. You can see my books. You can see all that stuff. So by the time they pick up the phone and call me or send me a contact, hey, Victor, get in touch with us, they're like 80, 90% into the buying cycle. In other words, they've pre-qualified themselves because they've researched me. Why else would you pick up the phone? I mean, nobody says, hey, what about this guy? Let's just look him up and call him. No, they research me. And so if you're a speaker, you want to be a speaker, you got to have video. You got to have great video online. But what I'm starting to see now, if I can share this with you, is I'm seeing a shift. You've probably figured this out already, Sam, is I'm seeing a shift from video dominance being YouTube to podcast dominance. That's what I'm saying. I'm seeing more of my traffic coming from the podcast now. We're up to almost 100,000. Why did we cross 100,000 once, maybe twice a month? So we're averaging around 100,000 downloads per month.
Great stats. I mean,
monster numbers. Now, we're still getting more views on YouTube. But recently, when I've been asking people, how did you hear about me? He goes, man, I love your podcast. Hardly anybody now says, I used to say, I love your videos. Now they say, I love your podcast.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I would have thought the video would have been the big hitter, but that's good to learn. So, all right, you started YouTube videos 12 years ago.
Before I forget to mention, I think there's a ricochet effect here. What's happening is they find the podcast convenient, something they can listen to. That's why they're 10 minutes long. But at the end, I'm always like, hey, go check out my website, go check out, my other content. And that gets them to my website where they can watch my video. And I think that sells them. That's my thought.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you started the videos 12 years or so ago, and you put those out. I'm guessing that was a gradual process, building up followers and building up views, much like myself when I started the show.
It's a depressing start. I
know the feeling, man.
Out there, 10 views. You're like, damn, 10 views. Are you kidding me? This is great content.
And then 15 views, then 20.
Yeah. But here's what's funny. So if you go online, you'll see, if you type in Victor Antonio and you type in the phrase sales excellence, right? Okay. How to become a great salesperson, which is literally, I turned on the lights in my studio, right? And it's a 15-minute rant that I just did. And I wasn't even going to put it up, but I had no other piece of content to put up that week. So I said, let me just throw this one up there. Who cares? And that one right now is my most popular video. It's like 1.6 million views. And you're like, really?
Wow. Dude.
So sometimes you don't even know what your great content is.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to take away, is that you shouldn't look to perfect your content. You should just making sure that as long as it's not terrible, put it out there. I mean, as an example, I post on LinkedIn every day. And the post that I put out that got the most traffic lately was me eating a toasted sandwich saying, this is my pandemic lunchtime. And it just blew up. I mean, I'm putting digital marketing tips and strategies. They'll get like 30 likes or so. This got hundreds and hundreds of likes and comments, and the views were through the roof. And I'm pretty sure I got leads from that.
I think
it's like, how?
I think what's happened, Sam, is that there's so much, when I started out, there were less people in the digital space, right? And today we're just inundated with digital content that when you put something out there that's a pattern interrupt, that breaks the pattern, like you eat a sandwich, your pandemic sandwich, they're like, what? What the hell is that? Oh, that's funny. And what people need is a little relief and humor at this point, not more content. And so even I'm aware of that. But I just think it's really fascinating that, you said something that I preach all the time and says, man, if your video is 80% good, 80% good, launch it. Just launch it. As long as you said, as long as it's not horrible, like you can't hear the audio. It's funny. People will forgive video, but they won't forgive audio. You know, that's the big one. That's always the big one. And so I tell people launch, but but people are so in their heads. Here's a digital tip. People are so in their heads, Sam, about, they just get in their heads about doing video that they don't do anything. I don't look good. I don't sound good. Oh, look at the background. And man, they're so in. I always tell people the key to being successful at video is to get over yourself. That's the biggest step. If you can get over yourself and realize you're not that bad, you're not that bad. And I'll give you one quick story, not to bore you, but this is important. I was doing a workshop. I think it was October or October, November, it doesn't matter. But it was a small group, 10 people in the room. Everybody had laptops, right? And we're talking about this social digital selling and how to send videos via email. And everybody's kind of like, yeah. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this. Let me just stop the workshop right here. Totally spontaneous. I said, what I want you to do is take your laptops, go find a location, record a 1-minute email pitch to me on video, on your webcam. And I mean, they freaked out. Freaked out. They're like, what? Yeah. I said, you got 20 minutes to do it. Something like that, right? They're freaking out. Here was the aha moment. So they came back, they gave me all their videos. We upload them one at a time. And then we watched them. And what was interesting is that there were at least 2 or 3 people who says, my God, it's horrible, Victor. I don't want to show it. Please don't show it. They're begging me. They were begging me in front of all these people not to show it. And when I watched them, I'm like, this is a great video. It was a good video. Again, my point is they were so in their heads, they couldn't see that they were genuinely connecting with people. And I always say, people don't want perfection. They don't. People want sincerity, right? They want that connection. They don't want a character. They want connection. They want to know it's you, man. Talk to me. Just talk to me. And what was interesting, those who complained the most typically had the best videos. The ones that thought they didn't do well had probably the best videos because they were so authentic and so sincere and so genuine. And yeah, I give them some tips on how to make them better. But my point is, it's the content, not the character that you're trying to portray. You know what I mean? Forget about how you look. Get over yourself. Forget about how you sound. Get over that too. Just deliver great content. Everything else fades into the background.
Makes sense. And yeah, I mean, just to touch on that, I think it's good to get a variety of content as well, especially on social. Like if you're doing text only posts, then every now and then putting out a video. And like you say, just get over yourself. I mean, you've got to do it now and then. It's only going to help with your personal brand. It's going to help with views. It's going to help with inbound inquiries. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Okay.
And
so
you get better. You know the 10,000 hour rule, right? The 10,000 hour rule, you just get better. And these people don't realize that by your first look, if you really want a good laugh, if you really just want a ha-ha, chuckle, I posted my first Toastmasters speech online. Okay. I had hair back then, so you might not recognize. Just say Victor Antonio's first Toastmaster speech. It was horrible. And I posted that because it was horrible. And people said, why do you post that? And here's what the response I usually get from people. I said, Victor, after seeing your first video and watching you today, even I believe it's possible for me. That's how bad.
Oh man!
So I
have to check that
motivation. If Victor could do it, you could do it. So, but I think what happens, if I can challenge anybody out there, why don't you do 20 videos? Just do 20 videos. Just go for it. And I'm telling you, by the time you get to number 20, hell, by the time you get to number 10, you're going to get really good. Imagine how good you're going to be at 50, at 100, which may sound like a lot to a lot of people, but it really isn't. If you did 1 video a week for 2 years, you're up to 100 something already. So just do it, man.
Just get started. Awesome advice. Okay, Victor. And just before we wrap things up, are there any habits that you follow or that you recommend that people follow to be successful in both life and business?
I have one, because I can recommend a lot, but I realize there's no point in doing that. Just recommend 1 or 2 people can take away. Dan Ariely, who's like a neuroscientist, wrote the book Predictably Irrational.
Okay.
In one of his articles, he wrote something called that everybody has 2 golden hours. 2 golden hours. 2 golden hours where you can be super productive, man. And so here's what I would suggest to people. Find your 2 golden hours. Mine is early. 5:30 to 7:30, man, the stuff that gets done in this head is amazing. After that, things go downhill real quick. But in those 2 hours, I typically do I always read. So
Okay.
that's a hat. I'm into reading, man. I'm the guy that buys. I think I go through maybe 2 to 3 books a month. I'm
Nice.
constantly reading, right? And so at least 2 books a month. And so I read for about, typically my brain, if it's a good book, it can hold my attention for an hour. If it's an okay book, maybe 45 minutes. But then what I then do is I take index cards. And so when I read a concept, I write that concept on an index card. Like, for example, let's say it's something on small business growth. By the way, if you invest, I don't know, just come up with whatever idea comes up. I write it down. I say, new way to close a sale. And I write the new strategy down, right? And then I just put question mark, how would I do it? Or how would I rework that? And I put it on an index card. And then I put the index card to the side. So I got a stack of index cards by my desk. And so those index cards become like memory tools, one. But two, I also use them as idea generators for podcasts, for content.
I like that.
We never go back and look at the book again. We outline a lot of stuff. We underline stuff, highlight things, post paper, post-its on it, but we never go back. But if you create this stack of cards, so sometimes when I'm looking for a podcast idea or video idea, I just flip through my cards and then I give it my spin, add my twist. So I would say, find your 2 golden hours. Definitely got to put some reading in there, and then maybe some content development as well.
Awesome. No, I mean, I couldn't encourage people to start reading enough. If you want to get the best of your game, doesn't matter if it's business, marketing, or sales, start consuming content. Doesn't matter if you're audio person, if you're a visual person, just find what works best for you. If it's reading books, if it's podcast, and you can even do it on the go if it's a podcast. And then, taking notes, that's great. I've just started doing something similar, but I'm using the app on my phone. So on my iPhone, you've got the notes app. So whenever something comes into my head, or whenever I read a piece of content and I think that's going to be useful, I'll note it down, make sure that. But I like the angle of putting your own spin on it, and I love the golden hours. I'm not sure if I'm more of a.
By the way, I wish it was mine, but it's not. By the way, I use the note thing when I'm on the move.
Okay.
When I'm on the move, I use the app, the note thing. And if you haven't noticed that translator, the audio microphone, so you don't have to type it out. It works really well, by the way. So I just
try that. That's even quicker.
Idea, So I just hit the microphone, and I look at it. It's actually pretty good. It can transcribe audio very well. So that's what I do.
Quality. Okay. Well, everyone, you've been listening or tuning into Sam's Business Growth Show, where we sit down with business leaders, experts, and entrepreneurs from across the globe. We find out their story, how digital marketing has helped them along the way, and their exclusive tips and insights to help you skyrocket your business. Victor, if you could thank just one person, either dead or alive, for having a positive influence on your career, who would it be and why?
I would have to say it's a gentleman there's 2, but I'm gonna narrow it down to one. I'm gonna respect the question. So I'm gonna narrow it down to a guy named Tom Stanton. And Tom Stanton was that manager I talked about with the wireless company that I joined. I went from the bad manager to the good manager. And what I liked about him, and I'll give you the short story why. As an engineer, I put my first proposal together, right? Now, before, when I worked for the other manager, if I did a proposal that was over 20,000, I would have to go in there. He would have to review it with me. He'd redline it like 20 times, the whole bit. After a while, I was just like, why do it? Because he's going to correct it all the time. Fast forward, I go to the second company, and I remember my first proposal was like $1.something million, right? So I went into Tom's office. I had the binder, front sheet had the summary sheet, and I handed it to him. And I expected him to kind of start ripping into it, get the red pen out, get the red felt pen out, start marking it out. Yeah. He just read the summary, looked at the total, and he looked at me and goes, is it all right? Is everything in here that should be in there? Is it all right? And I go, yeah, it is. And he goes, all right, boom, takes out his pen, signs it, right? I walk out of that office. I'm like in a panic. Like, he signed it. My God, he signed it without reviewing it. He signed it. And so I remember I took it to another engineer. He looked it over. I was missing a few things, but it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't worth going back and getting a re-sign. But I remember about a year or so later, I told Tom this story. Like, I remember going to your office. You signed the deal. Da, 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 da. He goes, in the past, would we do that? And he said this to me. He goes, Victor, I said, why would I pay you a lot of money and then do your job for you? I was like, exactly. And so his whole thing was, that taught me, man. What you do is you hand over accountability to the person. You don't hold it for the other person. which if we can close the loop on this thing, when I dealt with salespeople, I handed them the full responsibility of the position. If you need anything, you come to me. Other than that, I'll assume everything's fine and you're doing your job. And that was Tom's philosophy, and I love that. That really impacted me.
Awesome, man. Really, really got a lot of time for that. Fantastic stuff. All right, Victor. So the audience would love to know the best way to connect to yourself. Tell us a bit more about your business and the best way people can get in touch with your good self.
All right. Just type in Victor Antonio. You're definitely going to find me online. Go to victorantonio.com. So I do sales training or keynotes or workshops. I have books and an online sales academy called the Sales Velocity Academy. So check out the Sales Velocity Academy if you really want to, get better at selling. My academy has to be one of the most complete academies out there when it comes to selling. No fluff, just straight. Here's how you do it. Check it out.
Fantastic, man. The show is sponsored by webchoiceuk.com, helping businesses skyrocket their sales, leads, and brand positioning with results-driven SEO, conversion-focused websites, and mobile apps. That's webchoiceuk.com. Victor, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Sam, thank you for having me. This has been fun, man. Thank you.
Subscribe today for more digital marketing, sales, and business growth tips from the experts.